Hi, this is a critique for shot 290. Let's see if we can get this going. So essentially this is what we have so far. I'm just going to refer back to the brief so we know what we're asking for. Death is sitting in a chair looking regal and proud as she watches the activity in the sphere. She slowly turns to Devil to see what he's doing with a slight look of suspicion in her expression. But she's not too worried and she can handle anything he does. Then in the second part of the shot, Death turns to her old friend Cupid with a smile. Okay, you brought up some good reference material actually. So here's a nice regal look, and we've got a good, it's an okay look for suspicion, but I think you can probably just get a little bit of suspicion out of the regal look. So if this is the regal look, you can just do a little squint with the eye to get that hint of suspicion. It's sort of like a smile, like she's treating somebody new with respect, but at the same time there's a hint of suspicion in that look. And apologies if you couldn't see the camera very well during that, so sort of that sort of thing. Although I think the angle I have it on the camera isn't very good, but this angle to screen is actually very nice, and if you're trying to replicate that, that's a good start. In fact, most of what you were doing with the face wasn't too bad. I think you've just recently changed the face though, and it kind of looks like she starts out mad, she stays mad, and then she goes into a sort of slightly funny smiling pose. Actually, one thing you probably could do is have a look at the shots on either side, because you've basically got the two expressions you need right there and there. Essentially, she's already doing the two expressions that you need, just focusing on the face at the moment in those two shots. But the other reason I wanted to bring up the shots before and after was to show you in context how her body moves. And if you watch this entire shot, watch how much movement there is in her body. She twists her torso, she moves from one spine arc that way to a spine arc that way. She squashes and stretches her body, and she basically doesn't have any qualms about moving her torso around a lot. And then over in this shot, let's watch this one for context. This is the other side, and in this shot, let's see what she does with the body. She also goes from a slant, to camera. It's okay, here is the slant, and then she rolls over and now she's facing that way and slanting the other way. So basically she does a lot of spine reversals, and that's one thing that's missing from this, because it's very stiff. It essentially starts out in one pose, apart from the head. I mean, if we just chop the head off for a moment here and we look at the body, okay, that's not going to work, never mind. If we just focus on the body really doesn't move very much throughout the entire piece. It's just rigid, and it's not a particularly interesting pose from the get-go. So what I would do is, the two most important poses are the regal suspicion pose, which you've already established in your reference here, that perhaps you might want to go for that sort of a face, which means actually tilting it up the other way, and then just put a hint of suspicion in there. So what you were doing previously, I think, was probably slightly better there. But what you really then need to do is focus on what does the body do, because you've got three different poses, and I would suggest you go for something as different as possible for the initial pose. So when she's looking, it could be that she's leaned forward a little bit and she's a little bit focused. She shouldn't look mad at this point. There's no reason for her to look mad, because you've currently got it looking, well, it looks like you tried to put the regal in the first pose, and that's kind of the wrong thing. If we focus initially on her looking down at the sphere and try to give her hands an interesting pose, it could be that they're curled around each other or something. At the moment they're just sort of like this. I mean, they're just not a very interesting pose. They don't really tell us anything. Maybe she's got her hands curled around them like this, so let those fingers curl around each other, and just have her down, and this way you get her to do the exact opposite of what she's about to do, so that when she goes into the sort of regal look, she can sort of go this. Okay, I'm doing that the wrong way for your camera, but so, and you can reverse the arc of the spine the other way. You can go from a hunch over to a hunch up, and you can tilt the head the other way. So, because one of the things about a pose is that if you just hold a pose and it doesn't go anywhere, after a while it doesn't really have any meaning. But when you transform from one pose to another pose, that's where the most noticeable changes occur, and that's where you actually register all the meaning that pose you're going into has. It's particularly relevant on facial expressions, but it applies in all cases. So if you can find the opposite pose to come from to get into your regal pose, that regal pose will really work. And then I would suggest you, once you're trying to aim for those poses, let's bring this up, see if you can, so start out with something where it's nice and curled over and she's looking down that way, and then when she goes into the upright pose, I would aim for, let's try and get this pencil to work a minute, that opposite pose. So arc the spine that way, put her head up this way, tilt up. That is the complete opposite. That is regal, what you're aiming for there. And then you can reverse again when you come to the final pose. Let's get the pencil to work, which looks more like, then you can curl, let me think, a friendlier pose like that. So kind of the opposite of what you currently have, actually. So that, and then roll over to that. Trying to get the frame. Now, ironically, the arc of the spine is actually in the same direction, but that doesn't mean to say that you have to go directly from that to that. Because what I would suggest you do is perhaps, so if she starts here, sorry, I'm having to lift my arms up a little bit to get them into camera. Now let's keep it natural. So she might start down here, interested in what she's looking at. Then do a slightly suspicious regal look. Then there's so many possibilities of what you can do going into that happy pose. I would argue that you're not just turning. You can go from here to there, and it will probably stay fairly straightforward in between poses. But from here, there's any number of possibilities of what she could do to break things up and be a little bit more friendly. And if we take a look at this shot, you've already got a few ideas of just lots of little things going on in it. So we've got, she's looking over the glasses for starters. Maybe you can let the glasses help you out. You can have the glasses all the way up when she's looking this way, and then look over the glasses when she's looking that way. That's your choice. See if you can, that's up to you if you want to actually put that into the shot or not. But experiment with it and see if you can use that to help with the body language. Those are all the main points, I think. Yeah, so focus on that line of action all the way through the pose if you can, because I think just one of the things that's lacking in the current poses is it doesn't quite know which way it's going, because you've got an arc. Let's try to do this. Your current arc in a lot of poses here, that's very awkward. You've got arc that way, then the head goes that way, then that goes that way. It's just a bit muddled. Now, it's good that you're thinking about how to use that neck to push it in a different way, but ultimately the arc of the body is somewhat confused, and the arms just kind of feel a bit unnatural there, like they're not really enhancing the pose at all. So just put some thought into those parts. A couple of other things I noticed actually was the armrests for some reason seems to be turned and pulled in so far that it's intersecting the cushion. I don't think it was like that before. It might be doing the same on the other side too, but it's hard to tell. So I would just put them back to their normal positions. That's probably 0, 0, 0, and then before worrying about animating them, the drift up and down. Another was I spotted a weird lip thing going on. I think it was somewhere around here. If I just play here and watch the lip, it sort of just pops out. I don't know if that was intentional, but it doesn't really look like anything in particular right now. It just looks a little bit odd. So there might be some curves in the face controls that just need to be deleted. That's it. I hope that was of some help. Looking forward to the next version.